There's people in the media who say that we're taking over the US and the UK because of like freedom cities and free ports, but is it 0% colonialism? Like, no, when you have outsiders coming in who are wealthier, there's going to be challenges of class and getting them to move from Lisbon and San Francisco and Bali, and it's hard.
Yep.
And whereas in Africa, it's still urbanizing. I'm really leery of like things that start in revolution and start in violence. It kind of like sets the wrong tone, attracts the wrong people.
But have you thought about that process where gradually actually that zone can continue to expand?
Yeah, definitely. Like, look, people will bring up El Salvador to me, and I'm like, El Salvador doesn't need charter cities because Bukele reformed the entire country. I mean, we know where we want to get to.
Sure.
But what product can we build that users want today that does something useful that moves us in that direction? That's what I feel like people haven't figured out. But I've at least heard a decent number of like plausible proposals for things that could work. And I feel like with all this brain power, people are starting to figure out.
Hello everyone, thank you for being here for another live episode of Arc Firesides on Network and City States. I'm here with the wonderful Patri Friedman. I have to start with an apology for not having yet released the 3-hour podcast we did earlier this year. That is going to come out before any of these do, and it's ready. Just like this is fortunately going to have much better audio and video kind of like quality. I kept on giving it to people to sort it out, and no one could get it to the level that I'd like, but it's brilliant. And thank you for your time with that there. It's good to be back here again with you now, because we have 3 hours of your background on that kind of like podcast. I wondered if we took a slightly different approach with this kind of like conversation. We've just had a crazy week of events, culminating with the kind of the Network State conference. I guess, like, how are you feeling about the position of the space at the minute as someone that was basically one of the earliest people in this? What are your current reflections?
I have to say, like, before this year's conference, I was like somewhat bearish in the sense that, like, from the Network State conference 2 years ago to 1 year ago, I felt like people hadn't really figured out like what is the way to create, like, they have this big idea where a future they want to get to. Want to get to like 21st century governments, but they like really didn't know how to get there. Like, what product can I build that gives people value in a way that I can achieve without having like a sovereign recognized digital tribe?
Yep.
And like 2 years ago, it seemed to me that nobody had figured that out, and 1 year ago, it seemed about the same. And I'd say that this year, especially with like the huge rise of pop-ups and people doing zone projects, I feel like in the cloud, it's still pretty uncertain. But I've at least heard a decent number of like plausible proposals for things that could work. And I feel like with all this brain power, people are starting to figure out like some of it. But it still feels like the link from here to there is just big question marks. And that's an advantage that like charter cities have, right? It's like way, way harder because you have to convince governments, but like at least there is a clear path, like without question marks. It's just really hard.
And so I guess the point you're making there, right, is that again, when you're aiming for a charter city, you have this clear defined goal that you're getting there. You're going to get this place with autonomy, and you're going to go and create this new city that's there and generate all this GDP growth. And what you're saying is that without that, with all these other kind of spectrum of experiments that's sort of happening, it's much less clear what the goal is or what we're even building here.
I mean, we know where we want to get to.
Sure.
But what product can we build that users want today that does something useful that moves us in that direction? That's what I feel like people haven't figured out.
Do we feel that these pop-ups are still laughing, or?
I think I differentiate between something like Vitalia at Prospera, where a pop-up, like in the place that people can move to,
Sure,
is lead gen, right?
Yep.
That's top of funnel, and that's great.
Yep.
And when it's more speculative, like come here and like maybe we'll build something in this country eventually. It's great for community building, but it's much less clear to me how this leads to these permanent communities. But I think people are getting there and figuring it out.
Do you think we are at an inflection point in terms of like acceptance, or just like people believing that it's plausible that we can build these things, or do you feel?
Definitely. I mean, there's people in the media who say that we're like taking over the US and the UK because of like freedom cities and free ports. So like if they think that we're taking over like the first world, then like at least we're real threats to them. But yeah, I do. It does really feel like we're an inflection point in terms of the number of documentarists who contact me, like people who want to make art
Mm,
about this stuff,
mm,
the amount of serious capital. I mean, when I started Pronomos 5 years ago, it's like we were the only fund in the space.
sure.
And then like, Praxis I think was the first to raise from any other institutional investor, and now you've got like Polychain here at the Network State Conference saying like they're interested in these kinds of projects.
Yep.
Um, so I think there's way more acceptance and things are growing. I mean, just look at the conference attendee
Sure.
growth. It's
Sure. And do you think the quality is improving? Because again, like, one of the challenges of Pronomos, right, is that you didn't even end up drawing down all the capital
right.
because there just wasn't enough good deals, enough great
Yeah.
teams that you felt that you could sort of like back. Do you think that is also changing now, and there are more viable management teams and propositions that can be funded?
I think it's just starting to. I really think there's a lot of, it's about like the really world class entrepreneurs who can like handle these extremely difficult projects. Like they can do anything, and so the space needs to be really credible for them to be like, okay, this is my next thing. And I think we're just getting to the point where there's enough stuff that they can look at and like videos of real places and traction numbers where they're taking it more seriously.
Yeah.
But it feels like that's maybe just starting to shift.
Something I was reflecting on this week, and I don't know if you agree, but it's like, because there has been so little capital put into this sort of space, it's sort of like chicken and egg type thing, right? There's very little talent almost working on the space because, I mean, there are no jobs in the space. There's no success stories, whatever it is. I just like, it's
I don't think that's a bear like a world class founder. Like they bring the capital,
sure,
they bring the network, but it's hard to convince those people to do this crazy new thing.
it's getting there. It's getting there.
Even the ones I talk to who are like, I want to maybe do that as my next thing, right? There's like a growing number of those, but not as my current thing.
We'll have to see. But okay, so when we were speaking last, you were very excited about Alpha, and we had Bradford on kind of like yesterday, speaking and giving us an update on Alpha City. That's what you spend a majority of your time on at the minute. Is that fair?
Yeah, because we finished our deployment period at Pronomos, and from like a mark-to-market returns perspective, we don't really have enough to raise a second fund. So my focus is on helping our portfolio grow in general,
Hmm.
but especially Alpha because it's going to be a really significant markup that'll kind of make the whole fund one good, and then I can raise a second fund.
Hmm. Hmm. And do you want to give your angle on Alpha, and I guess like why you're excited about this, or like what you think that Bradford and you have done here differently that has allowed you to to potentially have this success with it?
Honestly, it's way more about him than me, right? Like my role was like bringing him into the space, and working with him at Pronomos and having him like learn everything about the space and kind of giving him all this stuff for his brain to like chew on and learn it, like getting all the lessons to him. But then like he's the execution beast and like, thank God for him. Like and what it took, on this like world-class founder stuff, like it took years, right? It was like multiple years, and he
Yep.
didn't go full time on Alpha until the
Yep.
first country was ready to sign the first MOU.
Yep.
Because he's like, I can do whatever, and I think I want to do this next, but it's
Yep.
got to be solid.
Yep.
Um, and I think it's really just like he's the most experienced founder in the space. There's a
Yep.
couple other people in the space, like E and Massimo, who have a significant amount of entrepreneurial experience, like Titus. But I guess aside from like E, these other guys, they have large businesses, but
Yep.
they're not serial founders
Yep.
and like, like steeped in Silicon Valley. And, I guess I'm a Silicon Valley like kind of absolutist. So, right?
Sure.
I mean, the culture is diffused, right? It's
Sure.
not about being in the place, but like, Bradford and I have been there for 25 years.
Yep.
Bradford was doing AI there in the late 90s.
Yep.
And just being steeped in that culture of how you get things done and execution. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of like Bradford's like, let's make a repeatable template, and like I'm just gonna go all in and try to do this ever. I'm like, nail it and then scale it.
Yeah.
Like, can we get one working first? And he's like, no. And I think if you can do it, obviously you can grow a lot faster. And also because like governments, Like birds fly, fish swim, and deals fall through, and government deals fall through twice as often.
Sure.
So like it's really good to have a lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah.
I think that's an important lesson for people in the space. Like don't get whinitis about a country. You got to be working with a bunch of places. The former guys did a good job with that.
Yes. But it's like, it's crazy how capital efficient he's been, right? Then with getting to where he is.
Oh, we spent $500,000.
Yes.
Yeah. We're
But
MOUs,
very
8
interesting.
countries.
Well, this is it.
The whole team's in Nigeria. Yeah.
Is this stuff really as hard as we've been making it out? If just Bradford and a few years
Dude,
after.
it's fucking harder. If harder. I went before we did alpha, like I knew it was hard, but I didn't know it was this hard.
But only $500,000.
Yeah, but it's not they want to believe that you can bring big money in to build it out.
Sure.
But you're paying some attorneys and you're flying to these countries and doing like marketing. I mean, a lot of what we've done at Alpha early on is like design work.
Sure.
Because the countries want to see it.
No, it's interesting, right? And Bradford was speaking about that as well, being able to actually paint a picture of the vision that you're going to bring.
I was like, why are you doing architecture when we don't have like the investor materials ready?
Yep.
And he's like, because that's what the countries need.
Yeah. That's interesting. But again, $500,000, I guess, like these MOUs that have been worked on by Alpha, right? These are billion-dollar, contributions of land and titles from these, and these are just the subsidiaries, right? And multiple this. So this looks pretty good for Pronomos.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that I've been realizing is that we're not starting a company. We are starting a conglomerate. It's actually to me most similar to like the chaebol, to like the closely held Asian conglomerates of businesses where it's and that's why I'm going to be out there, raising $500 million over the next year or two for this. It's because one city or one company couldn't take that much capital.
Yep.
But AI City and EV City and all of these projects, it's an entire business conglomerate that we're spinning up.
And how difficult you think it's going to be to get that capital?
I don't think it's going to be that difficult.
And why is that?
Because we have like, look at the size of these land deals, as well as the business potential in these places. It's like, there's tons of money in the world.
Sure.
Right. It's like, do you have something worth investing in? And then the tricky part is like the newness and the risk of it. Right. And that's, is really tough. I talk about how like every Pronomos LP is mission focused.
Mm-hmm.
Like people who are not mission focused, like didn't give me the money.
Sure.
Right. Like, because it would just be crazy from like a pure investment standpoint. But when you have something really solid, these business opportunities, this land, there's tons of capital out there. And we're still like in this raise, we're not going to be able to appeal to like random institutional investors. Like I'm not going to be pitching, US pension funds, but institutional investors in the Middle East and Asia who understand new cities, I think they're ready for it.
Yeah, no. And then, okay, so you potentially had this like massive markup on Pronomos, and it looks like just with this deal alone, then you have a, multiple of the fund, at least in, in theoretical kind of like return.
Yeah.
And then you think that you would like to go and raise a fund too for Pronomos.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's because you do think, again, that the thesis still stands and that the space is getting started and that now's the time to deploy.
Absolutely. But something I'm going to do differently, like I'll still, talk to like, this space is small enough that like I can talk to every serious founder.
Mm-hmm.
I can like put in a little bit of time helping give advice to like every serious company. And so I'll still take those pitches, but the focus is going to be like, who are the world-class founders who are intrigued by this? And how can I, maybe over a period of years, sell them on the space being real and convert, if I can find like 30 like world-class founders, I probably already know 10 of them who are like intrigued by the space and I maybe want to do it someday. And I can get like 3 of those 30 to start companies, like that's enough for fund 2, and then make smaller, more speculative checks in like the best of the kind of like young founders coming in.
I like, how much room is there in this market? On one side, we've got 8.5 billion people. They could all be served a better governance product, right? Let's get on and do it. And the other hand, like, how many alphas can there be going and carving up deals with Sao Tome, Cape Verde, Western Angola? Like, these governments are probably not. I mean, was it Sao Tome where it's 10% of their land that's being kind of like contributed? Like they can't do that many more times. I guess like is there some scarcity kind of like here?
Well, it's tricky because I mean, there is some scarcity in government deals, but there's also the proof of concept where when these things are, I sometimes joke that governments are even more herd animals than venture capitalists are, right? And when they see stuff working, like they all want it. And so succeeding in a few of these markets is going to like really open up the number of countries that are willing to consider this. And like even in these, like my personal lifetime North Star metrics
Yeah.
are about like how much of world like population, GDP and land area is zoned into 21st century government. And like, look, the entire world needs to be rezoned into 21st century government. And like the entire global south needs to do a Singapore and come up to standard. And like there is a massive amount of work. And like, Dubai, I looked this up yesterday. Dubai probably costs like low hundreds of billions to build,
Hmm.
right? Like the amount to stand up these cities around the world and get the world's population to places that are working well, like it's big.
Yeah. Yeah. What's Dubai worth today?
The
Dubai worth? What's Dubai worth? If it cost a couple hundred billion to build, what's Dubai worth
Yeah, I don't
today?
know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
It's really hard to estimate.
Yeah, no, I think its GDP is north of that, right? And then I guess it's like how do you value that? Um, okay, so that again,
One with like it's easier to get numbers in a place like Singapore, right? Because like the size of the Temasek and GIC holding, a lot of it's opaque, but
yeah,
they've saved like several trillion in profit that they've made.
yep. So again, so what are the most interesting things on your desk at the minute, or that you heard kind of like last week with everyone around the Network State conference? Like, what are you most excited about, or what do you think of the new, I don't know, the new trends or the new insights?
I don't think I have a good answer to that.
I mean, do you think to an extent like there aren't really new lessons that are sort of like being learned, or it's sort of almost like is Alpha just like successfully executing a formula that's sort of like just broadly always been there to do?
Hmm. I mean, a lot of it is like the learnings from Rendeavor,
Sure.
that's really helped. We're tech guys, right? And like working with like successful real estate developers in Africa has been really critical. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So local on the ground expertise. Okay. So now.
But there's a lot of it's not like a lot of new stuff this week, but there's so many lessons learned across the space that like we have not done a great job of like distilling and like teaching people. It's like and this is mostly mistakes. It's like more like fuck ups than it is like, well, here's how you do it. There's like a little bit of here's how you do it, but it's mostly
Yeah.
fuck
Yeah.
ups. But we really need to get better at like it, yeah, like recording this information, getting it out so that people can like get up to speed and like make new mistakes.
Do you have an example of one of those?
Um, there was one I was just talking about today where I won't name the country, but say there's someone who has a zone project somewhere, um, but they also have their main business that is their net worth is within the country but not within the zone.
Okay.
And so this gives the government incredible leverage because the government can crack down on the majority of their revenue outside the legal protections of the zone. So it's like be very, very careful about to what degree you have assets and businesses that are in the country, but not in the new jurisdiction that you're creating, because
Sure.
that is a massive attack surface.
That makes sense. And then, Patrick, you were here for the opening of Network School 1 year ago.
Hmm.
And then this is your first time back
Yeah.
kind of like here as well. Do you think it's changed much?
Yeah, I mean, it was much more like slapdash back then, and it didn't. I mean, it was the beginning, but it didn't feel like a community. I wasn't seeing people like living their lives and
Yeah.
like making themselves better. And that's very different now. It's like it's clear that the experiment was successful, and I'm looking forward to see how much they can make it grow.
And I guess, yeah, like here, do you, I mean, like, if you were in charge of Network School right now, what would you be doing?
Growth,
Yeah.
man. But open up more rooms. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Art and music.
art and music.
Yeah.
Talk more about that.
And biology is excited about this stuff too. I feel like the whole space is like we're too autistic. you know, and like you need art and music to inspire people, get them excited. They're doing a great job with this at Prospera with a local artist who's just turning all the walls into like cyberpunk and solar punk murals. Um, there's a band called like Gentes de Zona, like Boys of the Zone that they got to play at Prospera, you know. Um, and yeah, I think we need a lot more of on the culture side to make it, because it's not a conference, right? If you're gonna like live someplace, it needs to be like vibrant and alive and inspiring.
Yeah. Something again I know that you've said to me previously is that when you build these things, you're almost like a beggar. Like you need people. You've got to build things. And one of the things I reflect on a lot is these temporary versus permanent experiences,
Yeah,
and how much more difficult building permanent experiences are, even for a niche. And I guess my broad view is that like a niche approach fails automatically,
mm,
because even a niche, for them to be somewhere permanently, not temporarily, requires them to be able to bring their partner or find their partner, bring their parents, bring their children, their dog. And suddenly, even if you've got a niche, just with one degree of separation, you have like an infinite number of personas that all need a
yeah.
different little slice on society.
Like not in Prosper. I always thought, I've been working this up for 25 years. I was always like, I'm going to be there from the beginning and be a pioneer. And then you have kids, and it's like,
Yeah,
Prosper does not have enough autistic teenagers for my
yeah,
daughter to be friends with.
yeah,
And so it's just ruled out for me,
yeah.
you know.
It's tough, isn't it? Right? Do you think that it's the scale again, like with Alpha, the scale is very, very big, right? I guess they're also inheriting an existing population, right?
Yeah.
But I do often wonder as well that like you by starting as small as we are in lots of these places, we just sort of like have a lot of problems that just like
Yeah.
wouldn't be there if we were able to start at sort of like a
Absolutely.
larger magnitude.
Yeah, yeah, cold start problem and like the lack of economies of scale. I think is huge. But this is where, one of my lessons that I talk about is like building for locals versus building for nomads. And there's this idea in the space that like I'm making a new place and the people who can live anywhere will come there, but the people who can live anywhere can live anywhere.
Yeah.
And getting them to move from Lisbon and San Francisco and Bali and it's hard.
Yep.
And whereas in Africa, it's still urbanizing. The population is still growing.
Yep.
Often people are living with poor infrastructure and poor governance.
Yep.
And I think getting economies of scale and the size of the community, and like, walking around Forest City, I'm like,
Yep.
well, okay, there's 10K people here. How many restaurants are there? How many retail stores?
Yep.
And like getting the population so you have stuff there, even if they're culturally different, I think then makes it much easier to appeal to the people who have a lot more choice.
Yeah, no, it's
With this, like, there's been a lot of hit pieces lately. There was this Wired hit piece last week, and in the fact checking, they're
yeah.
like, so, this obviously mainly appeals to like rich people. Do you think it'll become more accessible over time? And I was like, what are you talking about? It's much harder for us to get rich people to come and move to the new places,
Sure.
right? It's like much more accessible to, say, people who are in country,
Yep.
like that's the audience, and like
Yep.
they're just coming at it from this eye that they don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely at least I guess an approach that you are more bullish on, right? Is actually just like going and increasing prosperity for existing populations, as opposed to getting a zone and moving a whole bunch of digital nomads over
I
there.
mean, look, what I'm in it for long term is I want a home for my tribe,
Mm.
right? And that's what, like, that was the kind of like the frustrated customer that like personally appealed to me. And I'm not going to pretend that like helping the global south develop was my passion, my North Star, but I think it is the sweet spot today. It is like the minimum viable product, like the people that we can help the most, right? Like I was saying about with network state companies like not really knowing how to create value,
Yep.
right? What is something I can build that people want that moves me in my direction? Like helping the global south develop is this very clear thing that they very much want. Their leaders want it, and that we're happy to help do. Like that's incredible for the world. It's like we have an answer to that question.
Are we going to have some sort of like colonial backlash at some point?
Um, I mean, I get accused of neocolonialism all the time. And I'm sad about like the inability to have like nuanced conversation
Sure.
about this question, because I feel like is this 100% colonialism or even like 20% colonialism? Like absolutely not. We're not coming in with force, taking over a country and extracting their resources.
Yep.
We're forming partnerships where we give equity to the government that
Yep.
goes into their public budget, and improving the lives of the locals. So it's very different. But is it 0% colonialism? Like, no, when you have outsiders coming in
Sure.
who are wealthier, there's going to be challenges of class like that need to be navigated well. And I think this is like a great topic to have conversations about, but no one seems to be able to, because they're either like rah rah on one side or rah rah on the other.
Well, what's the steel man's on either side of that equation? Like, we should just leave them sort it out themselves.
But yeah, I mean, we should keep doing like NGOs and international aid. Like, yeah, that's working fucking great. Like,
Yep. Yep.
I don't know, like open the borders to like bring 7 billion people in the U.S. That's not going to work. I'd like to see way more immigration to the U.S., but that doesn't scale. Like, we have to go help people locally.
And then, I mean, again, I was going to ask you about, again, like you saying the opportunity being this sort of global south, right? We have like some pretty distinct problems in the north. And actually maybe some of these, do you have an update on the kind of like the Frontier Foundation, the Free Cities Coalition, and the stuff that's maybe happening in the US? Is there any prospect there, or is it just already all over?
I think there's some prospect. We're going to make a bigger push in the first half of next year before the midterms. But the administration is busy with like a lot of much bigger problems. But I think that there is like leapfrog technology potential where, unlike, had like Africa, like skipping landlines and going to cell phones, but like only like the cell phones that had already been in the rest of the world. And I think that with governance, there's the potential. I mean, Prospera is this right now of like them actually getting much better governance technology and like leapfrogging past. And I think that, and then we're going to like drain talent and capital, from the global north, and that eventually becomes like a competitive threat. And like, I honestly, I kind of feel like the time when like the growth curve on charter cities will flatten is when like the global north like is forced to reform. And, I mean, sure, that's going to slow the growth of the industry, but for humanity, it's incredible. Like this is like the Hong Kong Shenzhen example.
And I guess that's where we're pushing, right? I mean, like, do you have some thoughts on it? I mean, should we be dealing with these problems in our own backyard as opposed to going to the global south? I mean, as a Brit here with the UK, and it's.
I mean, should we keep on fixing the bugs in the COBOL code, or should we like get onto like modern infrastructure? Like, you can only do so much, like to squash. And I think without. I mean, it's hard to reform these existing systems that have lots of incumbents.
Yep.
And I feel like they need to see both the threat and the example, right? And like, we can provide that. Like, we're taking your people, we're taking your capital, we're taking your companies, and we're showing you that this stuff works. There's actually, a little known example from U.S. history, which is that it was like the Western frontier states that gave women the vote first. Okay. It was like 2 of the first 13 colonies women could vote, and then like 11 of the next 13. And it was because the frontier needed women, and they're like, this is a customer. We're going to appeal to them by giving them this thing they want. And like it's kind of crazy to think today, but back then there was people who were like, if women vote, everything will be on fire. Like, it'll be a complete disaster. And the frontier states showed that that wasn't true, and we're stealing women. And so like the threat and the example, the carrot and the stick.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah, no, it's interesting. So I guess we're not don't have much hope for the US for now. Maybe next year something comes through, go across to the global south, demonstrate some different approaches.
Can't turn the country around.
What hope do we have, right? Yeah, exactly, right. So we got to go and do it elsewhere and prove that it's possible, and then retrofit, across those. I do think have you thought about that process where, even like to go back to Alfred Sao Tome, right, that you have a zone over 10% of the land, about the process where gradually actually that zone can continue to expand and be responsible for governing an even greater portion, kind of things. Like, do you think about how these might evolve, that we creep back up into the north and allow maybe other territories to opt into the systems that we've been building? Like, how these things might scale outside the original places we're building?
Yeah, definitely. Like, people will bring up El Salvador to me, and I'm like, El Salvador doesn't need charter cities because Bukele reformed the entire country. Like, charter cities are this incredible policy tool, which is like, when you can't reform an entire country, here's a way that takes much less political will to like create these bubbles of non-corruption, these bubbles of doing things a better way with new cultures, and I think that works great. But then, yeah, over time, right? Eventually, you prove out the legal system, and people are used to it. At some point, the government can then like change its national laws, right? And that's great. And then we don't need our zone, but and then we become more like just like city developers within the country.
No, it makes sense. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Is there any other kind of bits like, from this week or that you've been reflecting on kind of like recently that you think are worth raising to the crowd?
Hmm. Oh no.
What's
I'm
your,
still
what's your,
processing it all,
yeah, no, I know it's been a busy
like
week, right?
not
Um,
a lot of sleep.
but what's your, yeah, what's your current hot take?
You got to give me a topic.
Yeah,
I'll take on what?
yeah, no, yeah, it's,
I know you had even less.
yeah, yeah, I know. I just, yeah, I want to see,
We
but
we could ask them.
Are kind of the typical mistakes of new people that just enter the industry, how they're trying to do.
I mean, one of them is like trying to only work with one country. Another classic one that I see is this idea of like, I guess it kind of applies more at like the sovereignty level, but like thinking that the way that you get a sovereign country is that you somehow like hack sovereignty and get some kind of like recognition. I mean, like take Sealand. Like I love Sealand; it is something real, but like their legal precedents did not like transfer into them being able to like build up a country out of it.
mhm.
So people think that like you get your recognition and then you build your country, and I think that's exactly backwards. Like you want to like be the actual thing and then get recognized for it. It's like they're trying to do this outside in when it should be like inside out. Like have a population and a GDP ability to project influence that is at the 10th or 20th percentile of a country, and then like of course you should get that recognized because you actually have it. Another mistake is like getting land like too early in the process. Biology has this line that like charter cities are like the upside of venture capital and the downside protection of real estate. But like if you buy land before like the government deal is complete, you have the capital cost of real estate and the failure rate of venture capital, which is the opposite. Another thing is like not okay. The economic engine coming has to come first, and this is something a mistake that I feel like Prosper made, which is kind of like the jurisdiction and like then the biz dev as a thought later. I think like the economic engine
Sure.
for the society is like absolutely central. That powers everything. That's what your host country wants. That's what your investors wants. That's what you need to get people to move there. Like the number one reason that people, and this is an issue in the network state movement. We looked at survey data on this, is like the number one reason people move is jobs. The number two reason they move is family reunification. Ideology is down there at like it's like,
Yeah.
3% in the developing world and 7% in the developed world. It's like very low. So this idea that like one moral commandment will get people to like move places, I think that doesn't match the data. It's like it's the economic engine that drives.
Yeah, but I guess like 3% of, can be enough for your place, I don't,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Same.
'Cause what-
Yeah, Ukraine and Charter City is very bullish.
Which
Ukraine and Charter City.
here. Okay, I hot take on Ukraine. I'm very bullish. Here's the idea. It's suppose that the peace settlement with Ukraine is that they can't join the EU, right? But obviously they and the EU want to be very close to each other. So you have like a non-EU country with very strong trade links, train lines, and like the EU being very receptive and like wanting to get their goods into market. Like that's like adjacent to the I mean, it's even better. Like maybe they can be in the EEA. Like having non-EU access to the EU is very strong. So I've talked to a couple people, who are involved in kind of prep for reconstruction efforts there. I think there's a lot of potential in the Ukraine.
That's one. Please, okay.
So two parts to one question. One is just what do you think about the physical, like people who start physical communities first, which obviously is like a really hard lift, as opposed to starting things that are digital first and then perhaps manifest into the physical? And the second longer term part of this question is what's your dream for where we are 10 years from now?
Sure. I I think that starting like like legally autonomous physical communities is super hard and is a super heavy lift. I think that starting non-legally autonomous ones is a lot easier, and there's been an explosion of people doing these. I'm working with a couple people exploring maybe doing a fund for those types of projects. There's a lot of them. And, you just have to understand that like your co-housing community is like probably not going to become a charter city. And I think that people like underestimate like the difference in the type of skills and personality it takes to successfully get, 100 or a few hundred people to move and live together, which isn't as itself valuable. And it's so different from the like negotiating with governments and bringing in large industry anchor tenants, and raising the money it takes to build a charter city. 10 years is the perfect amount of time because I think that's when we should be seriously starting sovereign, not like sovereign from the beginning, but projects that plan to be sovereign. So like a charter city like should never become sovereign when that wasn't the deal with the host country from the beginning, because that screws all of us. It screws the entire industry if these are like threats to break away. Like they're the host country, you're underneath them. But I think within 10 years, we'll be ready to start making the deals where it's like, well, okay, here's the path to sovereignty that we see. Like we start out as a charter city within your jurisdiction, we pick out the land and you plan to like support us as we hit our milestones and then move to, speaking of the UK, to like being like an overseas territory, which like, French Polynesia has a huge amount of local autonomy. They don't handle like the military side of things, right? They're not like giving you French passports, but moving from charter city to like overseas territory, even if it's adjacent, to being fully sovereign. Kind of specking that out.
But do you think that are going to be, because political power is ultimately about the unity of people, not necessarily physically implement, And so my question was really
Yeah.
to that. Do you think that there's going to be powerful political entities that aren't manifest
Yeah.
physically? I mean, kind of like Jewish Zionism is basically one of the elements where there was a very cohesive community that then, somehow ended up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it really like, I think like unbundling sovereignty is really important. Like you get a bad deal with bundles. And so it really depends which parts of it you're unbundling. I think that we will have like digital communities that peel off some of the things. I mean, something like education, right? Or maybe even things like healthcare. I think that like there's a lot of potential like on the visa side, right? Like small countries want people visiting them. So I think having digital networks that have like recognized like passports that like with visa access to a number of small countries. I think that it's about identifying which parts of the bundle you can undo, whereas something like military power is a much harder part of the bundle to carve out.
What about taking a country the old-fashioned way? There's country like Cuba, they're ripe for taking. Like the people are fed up. The government doesn't want to govern anymore. They don't believe in socialism.
I'm really leery of like things that start in revolution and start in violence. It kind of like sets the wrong tone, attracts the wrong people. So I feel like the 21st century way is partnerships and voluntary opt-in. People are often like, can you like buy out or like take over a small country? And there's also like you have to be like working with the locals like hand in hand from the beginning. I think anything that's like perceived, true or not, as like foreigners taking our land, I call this the avatar effect, which is that like it makes people so angry to think that like strangers are taking their land that they can like defeat helicopter gunships with like bows and arrows. Like that's how angry people get. There's an example that's not well known in Madagascar where Paul Romer was working. He was going to bring in Daewoo, the Korean electronics firm, provide tons of jobs in the countries, and the opposition party found out about this and they started saying the president is selling our land to foreigners. There were like riots, like people were shot and killed at these riots, and they like kicked out the president. So it's like you're playing with fire.
Pause.
So I've met like a handful of startup societies who are like not thinking about becoming sovereign entity yet, but are like making a lot of progress in terms of population and economic development, right? And I think I can see a clear path to getting 1,000 residents. Even this is right? We're on like internet middle class, a flash. We'll start companies that go on to become unicorns, which is a huge fiscal opportunity for a country. What do you envision is like the potential end state that these kind of societies can start thinking about?
I mean, it really depends on the scale they can get to. So there's a couple of models. One of them is that you have communities like co-housing communities, co-working communities that grow and have like a culture where then you have a pool of people who already live together and trust each other who you can pull into another place. And maybe that's starting your own, but at a smaller scale, I think like being L2s in other people's L1s is like, I think like it's just starting to happen and prosper. I think it's like very underappreciated. Like the L1 is such a heavy lift. Like each L1 should be supporting like many L2s, and a lot more people should be starting L2s than L1s. If you can like really succeed at like a large scale in a country, then you can have like political influence and help enact political change. I just think it's hard because it's like it's such a different skill set.
Star-based Texas kind of situation where you go and make a bunch of jobs and build a whole village, and then you're like, hey, maybe they should be like
Yeah, the U.S. whole full fillet thing. Yep.
Ology has referred to the network state as sort of like tech Zionism, and his sort of ambitions sort of as like tech Herzl. We're both Jewish. I wonder how you feel about that metaphor.
Too polarizing. But I think there is something to it. Like, it feels like tech is like such weaker glue than like a Jewish identity. And to like get people to go into the desert and like fight with their lives to like make a new place. I think that you need much stronger glue than a tech identity. So like, in a looser sense, like, sure, like there is this culture of people that are a minority everywhere, and like they need to band together and figure out like what the places where they can be a majority. But it feels like a more like 19th and early 20th century approach. I think in the 21st century, people are gonna do things in different ways, like this like unbundling sovereignty and having like digital tribes that do some of it. But it doesn't. I think it's really hard to get people to like be that committed and risk their lives around like smaller identities.
Let's imagine like 10 years in the future, we see a shift toward the Democrats in the United States. They clamp down on tech in an extreme way. Tech people feel embattled. There's a battle of surveillance. There's like crypto is attacked, etc. Suddenly, this group of people whose like natural resources are extremely tied up and
Sounds like these individuals you types.
I mean, so it creates obviously the Holocaust was a huge part of the creation of the elevation of Zionism to a point of like do or die.
Right.
But what if that certain areas sort of arise, and is like, how does the tech communities or manage that, and what are the risks?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, it's like the worse, like the faster the legacy systems fail and the harder they fail and the more people are like getting hurt by them, then the more drive there is to do this new stuff. It's just hard because like I think like the consequences of like the light's still mostly going to stay on, and like people are going to be able to pay for things, and like the consequences of failure in this new like much richer world are less, and it's like harder to get the impetus to like make big moves.
Anyone else? Okay, that'll be
Be
amazing.
interesting.
Well, we'll leave it. We've got 3 hours of stuff from the previous one as well. Thank you so much, Patrick, for being here, and thank you everyone for the good questions as well. Thank you.
I've always been very distressed with the state of governments, how they often kind of Googled online for like new country or free city, and Prospero was one of the things that came up.
I think I recommend people every single day to go to Prospero. It's a beautiful place.
What we're doing with Prospero is we're trying to invent this industry called governance as a service. It's my co-founder Anton, he went on to found the Lovable, the AI tool.
That is the fastest growing startup.
This is a massively important movement, And the movement will only go from 1 to N once we go from 0 to 1.
Sure.
So I ended up, resigning my US visa that I just gotten. If you're a biotech founder or a crypto founder doing something regulated, then you go to Prosper. I think liberty is kind of under attack on all fronts, in all continents at this point. The more they earn, the more we earn in tax revenue.
Yep.
Right, and so we just reached 300 companies incorporated in Prospera.
It's like, how big is the ambition?
The ambition is that this becomes the new paradigm